Kypreos comes back. Oh, man, this time it did. Oh, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Maple Leafs Media. As always, I'm your guy Jake, and today we have a very special guest on here, former NHL player, broadcaster at Sportsnet for over 20 years, and current host of the Real Kyper podcast. Doesn't need an introduction, but I give it to him anyways. Nick Kypreos.
Jake, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm watching that video of me taking a few punches, giving a few punches, and I'm getting a headache all over again.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough game. So, did you watch the game last night between Montreal and Tampa Bay?
I sure did. I haven't missed too many. It's always nice when you have got your own show that you can work at your leisure, but watching games is a must, and certainly watching Montreal still fight through it is a nice thing for all of us, especially when you're dealing with a Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah, it's been quite the run from the Montreal Canadiens, and I don't think this is something that anyone really expected. They're shocking the world. Currently down to the Tampa Bay Lightning 3-1 in the Stanley Cup Finals. Do you think that the Montreal Canadiens can mount a comeback and pull off the reverse sweep?
Well, there's a reason why it's only happened once in a Stanley Cup Final since the early 40s, and it's highly unlikely, Jake. And as much as you'd love to think that there's a great story here, it would have to go against tremendous odds. And that's not saying that it can't happen, but it probably won't. But they can certainly make things interesting. And even to go back down to Tampa for Game 5, I think when you have a Carey Price with a lead, that can get dangerous for Tampa Bay, and that certainly happened in Game 4. They had their chances. They hit 3 goal posts in 3 different periods by 3 of their top players, and they couldn't pull it out. We'll see what happens in Game 5, but Carey Price with the lead will give them a chance to possibly bring it back for Game 6.
Yeah, and that seems to be so important for the Montreal Canadiens. They need to score first in games.
Without a doubt. The issue here is how long do they have to wait and how patient can they stay? And I don't think that they had their first shot on goal till probably halfway through, maybe even 8 minutes left in the first period, if I stand corrected. And that's just, it's not good enough. It was good enough last night, but to suggest that Tampa will miss their opportunities like they did early in Game 4, factor in the power play, couldn't get it done. I don't like those odds to win 3 more games for Montreal because Tampa Bay's too good and they've got balanced scoring. And I'm sure Cooper and company feel like it's a one-off, and Canadians won't be so fortunate in Game 5.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Montreal Canadiens, it's been a great story to this point in time, but the Tampa Bay Lightning, they're the defending Stanley Cup champions. This team is loaded top to bottom, side to side. Everywhere the Tampa Bay Lightning, they're the best team in the NHL.
Well, and the game breakers, and they've got 2 of the best, not only in modern day, but over the course of history. And we know Kucherov and what he's been able to do in the last 2 playoffs. Only Gretzky and Lemieux have been able to do back-to-back 30-point postseasons. And they're going to go down in history as 2 of the best with Braden Point. And yet we still talk about the depth of Tampa Bay and the ability to score goals. Maroon's another example. Jake, some people sit there and go, "What's he doing on the ice that late in the game?" And he scores a tying goal to bring it to an overtime. But that's the depth that you need. It's a different sport. It's not basketball where one or two guys can carry every minute of every play. It just doesn't work that way. Even their star players have to sit 2/3 of the game on the bench and wait for their next shift. That's why you need players like Gord and Maroon and Barkley and Goudreau, who people are calling the third line. And I'm like, no, there's some nights when they're the number one line. That's how good they've been. And Montreal has a challenge with that. They made a couple of changes. Kakiniemi's out. Romanov in on the blue line, and they were able to create some magic because of it, but they don't have the depth of Tampa Bay, and that's why you still think that there's every reason why this should end in 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Tampa Bay it's unreal. They're stacked everywhere you look, and like the top players, their top star players are always performing, and then the guys lower down the depth chart, they chip in too, and you need those contributions to succeed in the playoffs.
And that's why they're 60 minutes away from a back-to-back, and we know that's difficult. In a salary cap era, winning back-to-back is very difficult, and Uh, they are now a team that has put themselves in a position to start thinking about a dynasty. But we'll see what happens with the flat cap and who stays and who goes. Those are challenges, maybe, and a conversation for another day. But the depth that you're talking about is the reason why they're in this predicament of going back to back.
Yeah, it's outstanding. And behind you, I see you have a book, Nick Kypreos. It's I have the book right here. I gave this a read, and it is a great read. But I want to pull out a, a statement that you made from page 1 in the book.
Sure.
In page 1, you said GMs have a tendency to forget your contributions, and more importantly, they don't give a damn. Your past contributions, rather. What have you done for me lately is really all that matters to them. That part of the game will never change. Now, when you examine the current roster of the Toronto Maple Leafs, can you justify keeping this core together solely
Yeah.
based off of their potential rather than their success?
Well, Jake, let me just kind of make sure. When I speak of that quote, I'm probably talking about 99% of the majority of players. But what you speak of is major commitments from the organization and Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan to the likes of Tavares and Matthews and Marner and Nylander that run far deeper than what have you done for me lately. There is an exclusion clause in their contracts that say that they get to buy more time. And from a management perspective, when you've made a commitment like that, it's really apparent that it's with an attitude of being all in on those guys, and they're doubling down on their core guys, those 4 core forwards. And for the past few years, we've talked about too much upfront money to 4 forwards, essentially half your cap, and whether or not it would work. And so far, they haven't been proven correct, that they haven't found the recipe, but that's not going to keep them from again doubling down or taking a chance on building around them. But it will be a challenge from here on in because the dollars are not going up. There's no more room to add to a salary cap to surround those 4 guys with guys like Coleman and Goudreau and Gord. It's just not there, and that's the biggest challenge for Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan, is to go with a lesser of a plan B, which is find a supporting cast. They love the cast, the stars. They just they're looking for supporting roles, and they haven't been able to do it. And they thought they might have had some magic with Wayne Simmons and Spezza and Thornton. It's not the right mix, but they're going to double down again on on Simmons and Spezza, and we'll see who they can kind of bring in here to add some spice going into next season.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard it all with the flat cap situation. That obviously makes things harder, but every team has to deal with it. The Maple Leafs kind of dug themselves a hole with that prior to it happening, with the pandemic. But you're right. You gotta find ways to supplement the top scorers on this team. The depth has not been there for the Maple Leafs. Simmons, Spezza, I like their contributions, but not like Spezza was the best player on the Maple Leafs, debatably in the playoffs. Wayne Simmons, he broke his wrist, so I'll give him a little bit of leeway there. But I saw you talking about on your podcast Corey Perry. They should have brought in Corey Perry over Wayne Simmons in retrospect.
I believe that, and it was a tougher sale for Corey Perry to convince the Leafs that he was the guy, and Leafs weren't the only guy. Kyle Dubas wasn't the only one that thought Corey Perry was washed up and had nothing left. But and Bergevin, I don't think ever saw him play the role that he's played in the last few months. Maybe that makes everybody dummies because he was pretty darn good for Dallas last year in the Edmonton bubble. But he's really picked up where he left off. And we're talking about a special player, special in his career, not only for the Stanley Cup early in his career, to the MVP, to the gold medals. But this guy has a lot of juice. And we're seeing again in these playoffs. And Bergevin was the lesser of everyone because he didn't even actually sign him till around Christmas time. And that was to a taxi squad. So it's really hard for even Mark Bergevin to say, well, we knew that Corey Perry could be this player because it certainly didn't start out that way. But Corey Perry fought himself into a starring role for the Montreal Canadiens in a Stanley Cup Final. And while Wayne Simmons has had a very good career, it's not even close to Corey Perry's. Yet Kyle Dubas had his reasons for going Wayne Simmons. Wayne did have, like you said, Jake, he did have early success and never regained it after the wrist injury. But whether it's a strictly goals in front of the net that dried up, but other ways to make contributions just weren't there either, especially on the forecheck. There was no real presence, but Wayne Simmons wants another chance, and he's going to get another chance. So we'll see where it takes the Leafs.
I'm excited to see the Wayne train in Toronto again. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. I'm a real big fan of Wayne Simmons, but looking back at last offseason and the trade deadline event, some of the players the Leafs brought in, the older veterans, Foligno, Simmons, Thornton, Spezza. That's great. Great additions, veteran leadership, but guys who haven't won the Stanley Cup, guys who haven't been that far. You look at what Montreal did. Eric Stahl, Joel Edmondson, Corey Perry, all Stanley Cup champions.
Yes, and there is some value to that, but you still got to be able to get it done on the ice. And Eric Stahl had a very difficult time, I think, in the first 20 games, and I questioned it for sure. But he's found a way to contribute. He's found a way to get some points. He's noticeable on a forecheck. Him, Armia, and Corey Perry cycle the puck. There's some shifts that they dominate, and that's just something that we didn't see out of the Toronto Maple Leafs with Thornton and Simmons. And like I said, he's going to get another crack at it if he can come in and play a role on the power play again in front of the net, get some breaks, get some goals. He's going to feel better about himself. The Leaf fans will feel better about himself, and hopefully Wayne Simmons can set himself up for a playoff run, much like Corey Perry has in Montreal.
Yeah, I'd love to see some of these veteran guys win in Toronto. Maybe next year. Maybe next year. That's been the thing around Ontario for a while now.
Listen, I look at next year if everything goes back to normal. the Leafs and even the Montreal Canadiens, they're going to be in a dogfight to make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be a very tough Atlantic division. You got even the Ottawa Senators are on the come up. The Florida Panthers had an outstanding year this year.
Outstanding, and only going to get better, only going to get stronger. They'll have Ekblad back, hopefully healthy, and that won't stop them from, I think, tweaking the roster. And you factor in a very competitive Metropolitan division with the likes of Carolina. The Rangers should be better. Washington, Pittsburgh. Like I said, it's going to be tough. There may be only 3 playoff teams that come out of the Atlantic, and that'll even put more pressure on the likes of a Toronto and Montreal. But the Leafs in a flat cap, uh, it's going to be difficult now with Hyman possibly leaving for bigger dollars. How are you going to replace Zach Hyman's importance to the hockey club? Morgan Riley's a year away from UFA. I don't think they want to go down the same path as Frederick Anderson and just have him merely play out his contract. It's going to be tough for the Leafs to have anything remotely look like this past previous season during the regular season. So uh, it'll be interesting to watch, no question, Jake, and we'll be on our couches watching.
Yeah, you bring up some very interesting points there. Morgan Riley, Zach Hyman, even with Frederick Anderson, what's going on with him right now? There's been some rumors swirling around about him potentially re-signing. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs right now. And just so everybody knows, they're not a lock for the playoffs next year.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly, that it will be incredibly competitive. You mentioned the Ottawa Senators as well as a team that I think next year should remain in the hunt for a playoff spot right to the bitter end. Depending on Matt Murray and his consistency, but it seems like there seems to be great young prospects there that have turned into uh, star players for Ottawa and hopefully superstars around the league in the next few years. So Leafs will be in tough. They gotta address Morgan Riley, and they got to address their goaltending situation. Jack Campbell had a great run uh, during the shortened regular season, but you want to leave it all in his hands. I think is a big mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Jack Campbell. Of course, I'm a big fan of him. I love the story that he's had, how much adversity he's faced to get to the point that he is in his career right now. But he's still not even played 100 games in the NHL. It's a
No,
small sample size.
it is, and I seemed a little overwhelmed in Game 7. We heard his quote, Jake, calling the Gallagher goal in Game 7 the worst goal of his career. It's in the biggest game of your career, you can't let in the worst goal of your career.
Yeah.
And if they need to bring him along slowly, you need experience behind him to alleviate that pressure that he obviously feels. And when you're talking about a team that's supposed to contend for the Stanley Cup, that's got to be worrisome for Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan.
And I'm not sure that to supplement Jack Campbell in net, Frederick Anderson's the answer next season. I mean, he really struggled last year. He's had a great body of work for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm a fan of him. But last year, he really struggled. It's going to be difficult to pay him a big sum of money.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to pay anybody a big sum of money. So that's the tricky part is how much quality are you getting for the amount of money that you're willing to pay? So if you can't pay Frederick Anderson $5 million, what can you pay? And what do you expect to get with that money? Grubauer's an unrestricted free agent. I think Colorado wants him back, but he isn't exactly going to be cheap either. So I I don't know. That's going to be again very interesting to watch Kyle Dubas kind of manage this scenario on who ultimately wins that spot to share with Jack Campbell.
Yeah, it's question marks all around for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that at this point in time, it's just speculation, really. Um, but a few years back, when you were on Sportsnet, and things were completely different surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs at this time, uh, you suggested that the Maple Leafs should trade Mitch Marner.
Which got a
With
lot of attention.
It did. With what we know now, with he's averaged well over a point per game in the regular season. He's a very talented player, but
Yeah.
when we get to the playoffs, it doesn't exactly transition to success. So, what are your thoughts now?
Well, I've always been a big fan of Mitch Marner. I was fortunate enough to even coach a prospects game, a Bantam prospects game, as he was entering Junior A hockey, and I knew he was a special talent back then. Uh, to come totally clear on my suggestion back then to trade Mitch Marner, that was strictly coming from my end, watching him being used from day one. And clearly at that point, there was a level of frustration, not only for Mitch Marner, but Leaf fans, that he wasn't used properly, that he was on the fourth line, that he was still finding ways to produce, but not utilized in a starring role. And at that point, when I made the suggestion, Jake, for the Leafs to trade him, it was only because I think he was being underutilized, that they weren't getting their bang for their buck for a top five pick, and that if they were going to use him in a limited role, why not trade him right now for a top defenseman? And that's why I said trade Mitch Marner, not because I didn't think he was a very good player or he'd end up being a great player. Just at the time, I didn't like the way the Leafs were using him. Saying that, he's turned into every bit of a star player that people forecasted him to be. It certainly hasn't transitioned into a playoff scenario, but it hasn't for Marner and hasn't for Morgan Riley or any of any one of them. And I think Mitch Marner should share his portion of the blame, but there's plenty to go around on what's wrong with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And again, for guys like Braden Point or Mitch Marner to succeed in the playoffs, they've got to have special players around them, including role players. And the Leafs just haven't even come close to being built like a Tampa Bay Lightning. And Mitch Marner should carry a portion of the burden of not producing, and he's a big boy, and he's done that, and he will carry that into the next season. But there's plenty of fingers being pointed, and I'm not sure all of them should just be pointed at a guy like Mitch Marner or even Austin Matthews to a certain extent. They're young, they're learning how to manage expectations, learning to manage the big contracts, and they'll still get more opportunities to prove that they're good players, if not great players. But the team around them's got to be a lot better.
Yeah, now I'll say this as a Maple Leafs fan, lifelong Leafs fan, I haven't really witnessed any playoff success. It's really frustrating, but you're right. You can't just point fingers at one person. You can't just point the finger at Mitch Marner. Austin Matthews can take some of the blame. I thought Riley had a decent playoff series, but he hasn't really been a playoff performer. Uh, Hyman wasn't really there very much this year. You can look all around the Maple Leafs locker room and point the fingers everywhere.
And great regular season team, but not built for the playoffs. And I don't know how many times year after year we can say that it's two different teams, it's two different leagues when it comes to the regular season and what I call the real season. And the only season that matters is the playoffs. And it's one thing to have a roster to get you there, and it's another one that can get you a Stanley Cup. And the Leafs have not been close at all for many years. Thus, your frustration, Jake.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but I'm also optimistic for the future because these guys are still young. They're still young,
Yeah.
and
But
there's
they
still
are on
time.
the clock, Jake, and
They are.
you only have Austin Matthews for 3 more years, believe it or not, off
Mhm.
his $11.6 million contract. And I kind of shook my head when they signed him to a 5-year deal because while they're young and still learning, uh, the roster isn't going to get stronger anytime soon, and you only have 3 years before Austin Matthews can walk out the door as a complete unrestricted free agent. So there needs to be a sense of urgency, not necessarily panic, but there has to be a sense of urgency for Kyle Dubas that the vision that they've had in Brendan Shanahan's, and now that's 7 seasons for Brendan Shanahan, that they've got to get this right in the next 12, 16 months.
Yeah, I mean, Austin Matthews, the way that contract was constructed, it's a bridge contract, so he can still earn more money in his prime years. He has an out if he'd like to leave the Toronto Maple Leafs
Yeah,
ultimately.
it's a great contract for Austin, but it's a bad one for the Leafs because he'll be in his prime in 3 years and completely free to go back home, go to New York City. He'll have his choices in 3 years.
And let's just make this clear for everybody. I believe I'm having the same understanding as you here. So the dollar sign isn't the problem with the contract, it's the years and the fact that he has an out in 3 years.
Correct. Absolutely. And 5 is a very difficult number back then because it didn't buy enough unrestricted years. Uh, and now Makar needs a new contract, and I'm hearing that Colorado that wants nothing to do with 5 years. Maybe the minimum they'll go is 6, uh, and nothing really shorter than that, unless it's a true bridge contract. And to have a true bridge contract would mean that you don't become an unrestricted free agent when it's done. And that's where they want to go with Makar. I think they learned a big lesson with Austin Matthews' contract in Toronto that 5 is not a comfortable number.
Yeah, it's not. It's not a very long window. It doesn't really keep your window open for too long. Um, so we've been talking about the Maple Leafs a lot. I want to ask you one more question about the Maple Leafs before we move on to our next topic here. Uh, we've been talking about the playoffs, the downfall of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we have to stick with the theme a bit here. So this team, they haven't won a playoff series in 18 years now. Is what's
Your
wrong?
memory's better than mine, I can tell you that.
What is wrong with the Toronto Maple Leafs? Is this a curse, or is this a
No,
mental problem? What
no.
is it?
I don't think it's a curse, but I will say that it does take special characters to win in this market, and I've played in some of the worst markets in my time in Hartford, and I've played in the best markets with New York and Toronto. But it takes a special kind of character player to win and thrive in this series, and we've seen it. The closest we've seen it so far is in the 90s with a guy that led in Doug Gilmore, Wendell Clark, and it it's going to have to be an attitude that the Marner and Matthews kind of take over on, and that's that you can respect the pressure points of being in Toronto, but you can't let it take over and hamper you or handicap you. Sometimes it could feel like handcuffs on you. You can be overwhelmed by it, but it really takes a special talent to and a special character to overcome all of that. And you just got to find those guys because I've seen it eat up a lot of players over my career and as a broadcaster that there's certain players want to run and hide after playing here. Tyson Barrie can't play in Toronto, but he can contribute in Edmonton or Colorado before that. that's just doing your homework and understanding, the makeup of somebody before you trade them or sign them to a contract. But they're out there. You just got to find them. Got to find the right players, the right temperament, the right attitude to play in a market like Toronto's.
Yeah, this market's definitely a lot. The Toronto Maple Leafs market. It's a lot. It's a massive market. You were traded from the Rangers to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Can you compare the two markets? Like, can you compare just overall? What's it like playing for these two franchises?
Well, first of all, when I got traded to New York, it was the longest drought in NHL, right? From 1940 to 1994, 54 years. So I don't think I have to tell you who surpassed that longest drought now.
Hmm.
So the Leafs have that burden. And when I got traded to New York, Jake, that's the first thing that I heard was we got to end the curse, the 54 years. And there's no question that that's the theme now for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I would say that probably, my experience in New York, people were still a lot more optimistic, I think, than Leaf fans in general are today, which is a little unfortunate because as fans, you got to be there for the good times and the bad times. And I know you, Jake, as a fan, are tired of the tough times, but you don't bail on your team, right? You stick with them, and you hope again. This is in the hands of Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas, and they've it's upon them to get it right, and it's upon them to fix it. Brendan Shanahan's won Stanley Cups. He's seen it. He's lived it. He should know the recipe. He should know the balance, and he's going to get another crack at it next year. You just got to keep your fingers crossed as a Leaf fan.
I don't believe in curses. I believe that there's teams that have been, they've been labeled to be cursed. You were talking about the Rangers earlier, the Leafs now. We can go back to the Boston Red Sox, the Chicago Cubs. I believe that the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to win eventually. I'm a true fan. I'm optimistic. So that's all I got to say on that topic.
Well, you're a young guy. I think you can be patient a little bit. I'm not sure others can, but that's what makes our sport great and unique is that there's a passion for your team that's probably as strong as any other sport, including soccer in Europe or baseball in America. And we know what Leaf and Canadian fans in particularly because they are original six teams. We're talking about uh, commitments to your team from generation to generation, great grandfathers to grandkids. And that's a good thing. It's a great thing for our sport that you'll be there through thick and thin. And you just hope you can cash those chips in, of those loyalty chips in eventually. I'll never forget, like it's been a while now, Jake, but being on the ice at Madison Square Garden when the final buzzer went to win the Stanley Cup and just seeing people crying in tears, thanking you. They never thought they'd live to see the day. It changed their lives. It changed the way they feel about themselves. It was an incredible, moving experience to not only win a Stanley Cup, but to win it in New York City with so many other teams that have failed and the players before you. And we've all fantasized, myself including, to win it in Toronto and finding out what that would be like and how emotional it would get for a lot of people from generation to generation. And that's what keeps you going. That's what you strive for. That's what you live for. And all the kicks that Mitch Marner and Austin Matthew are taking right now, the one thing that keeps them going is that the visualization of winning a championship in Toronto. It's the reason why you get up in the morning, the reason why you go to the gym and train, the reason why you spill it out on the ice every chance you can get. And I know Leaf fans feel a little ripped off from the playoffs, but you live to fight another day, and that's what those guys are going to do next season.
That's absolutely right. They live to fight another day. it's been unfortunate, but all this criticism and the lack of playoff success is something that the Maple Leafs stars and everyone on that roster really, that's something that should just add fuel to their fire. It should motivate them and drive them. It's a lot to handle, but that should motivate them.
Well, it has in the past. You don't get to this level. You don't. You're not in the discussions of being the best hockey player in the world, and I'm not talking about McKinnon and Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews. I'm talking about 750 players in the NHL. They are the best in the world. They are players that have overcome great odds. They've probably heard 1,000 times why they shouldn't dream about playing in the NHL because the odds are so against them. So there's already a built-in mechanism when it comes to these hockey players on being told why you shouldn't think that you can play in the NHL, or you're not good enough, or the odds are way against you. So they've already got that built-in feeling of maybe us against the world. So that should it should be an easy bounce back to say, I just want another chance. Just give me that one chance. I know I didn't make the most of my opportunity last season, but I will this one, and I will learn from it, and I will be better and stronger. That's the recipe that got you to the NHL. You just need to find a way to use it now in a playoff scenario.
That's a great point. And as a player who's undrafted, you had a lot to overcome. What was the biggest challenge for you to overcome to get to the NHL as someone who's undrafted?
Well, physically, you get hurt. Sometimes you don't feel like you're the same player, but that I think pales in comparison to the mental challenge, and that's the one that says I'm going to dust myself off and I'm going to get back up, and I'm going to come back even harder. It's easier said than done, and there's some that have a cap to that, and then shut it down, and then there's others that says you're gonna have to drag me out of this game. I'd rather die than quit. And that's the biggest challenge, is that if you have that intestinal fortitude to keep going when all the odds are against you and you have every reason to quit or go into something else, and you say, no, this is what I want to do, and I'm coming right back at you. And that is the biggest challenge. And that's just not sport, but that's anything in life. That if you have a vision, you have a passion, you have a dream, and you're not ready to let go, uh, and it fuels your fire, then go for it. That's my biggest advice to you or anyone else, Jake, is how can I sit there and live by it and not tell younger kids today to not do the same thing I did, and that's just hang in there.
Yeah, you gotta push through. You gotta overcome adversity. As they say, life's not always sunshine and rainbows, right?
Nope, but there is enough sunshine for everybody, and that's why you got to feel that you look at other people and you see their success, and you shouldn't be jealous. You should be inspired. You should sit there and say, okay, if he can do it, why not me? I'm just as talented. I'm just as smart. I'm strong. I'm as strong. I train as hard. Uh, I take care of myself. Why not me? And there, like I said, there's enough sunshine for everybody to go around.
Well, you've had a very successful second career in the sports broadcasting industry. You had a successful career in the NHL as well. Stanley Cup champion, now sports broadcaster, podcaster. So, what would be the biggest advice you'd give to someone that is trying to get into the sports journalism industry specifically?
Well, and like what we just talked about, it starts with a passion. And clearly, I listen to you talk hockey, talk Leafs, and there's a passion there that, this doesn't feel like work at all. And I feel very fortunate in my life that I feel like I've never worked a day in my life. I've made money off of hockey. I've made money off of broadcasting, but it hasn't been a job. It doesn't feel like work. It's just something that I love to do. So if you can take some of that passion for whatever you have in life and turn it into uh, a career, then man, you're way ahead of the rest of the world. So I was able to talk hockey, be around hockey, watch games, even though I stopped playing, and I got another crack at a great second career that has been over 20 years now. I transitioned that into a podcast I do with Doug McLean on Real Kipper at noon, online movement, and a YouTube channel, and it's been fun so far. But follow that passion and give yourself the best chance. I knew nothing about podcasts. I knew nothing about how YouTube worked, the internet, but you just educate yourself. You give yourself the best chance to put a show together on the internet and cross your fingers and let her rip. And that's what we've been able to do so far, and it's been fun.
That's great advice, and I appreciate that. I am someone who I love the game of hockey. I love sports in general, and I look up to the broadcasters I've seen on TV my entire life. Guys like you, Kelly, Rudy, just to name a few. Like I look up to you because that's something I want to do. I do this, and I feel like it's not working. Exactly what you just said.
Well, sometimes those can be feelings that are certainly they're all any feeling you have is legit, but they could be also in the moment. And if you take a deep breath and maybe step back and look at it from a different perspective, not one with so much emotion, but more practicability and on maybe what's working, what's not working. You make some adjustments, but you don't have to have won a Stanley Cup or play professional hockey to end up in the broadcast world. We've seen many successful people doing it. Bob McKenzie was a writer. Elliot Friedman started out at the Score as a reporter, and they've been able to parlay that into nice careers. So it's possible. You just give yourself the best opportunity, continue to network, continue to reach out to people, and you just you hope for the best. There's no guarantees on any of us in terms of what we do or how successful we'll be, but you want to be in the game. Just keep yourself in the game, give yourself a chance, and then you hope for the best.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm just gonna keep pushing forward. I want to ask you though. So, at what point did you realize that you were going to retire from the NHL, and how long after that did you decide that you wanted to get into sports broadcasting?
Well, I did suffer a concussion my last preseason game that put me in a position to think about other options. It wasn't as I wrote in my book, it wasn't a given that I was going to retire, but it came under um, heavy consideration after a doctor in Chicago, James Kelly, advised me to not take any more chances, including one that could be fatal. So I needed to look at other options. Now, the one thing that I try to do, Jake, throughout my career is not shy away from the media. Some guys are comfortable with it. Some guys aren't. Some guys turn it down. I didn't turn down too many opportunities to be interviewed or to be in front of a camera. That was not with the intent of guaranteeing a post career, but one that I found interesting. I always found television interesting. I loved watching television as a kid growing up. Always had our favorite programs, and I always found that that fascination with television and the entertainment world is something that I wanted to learn more about. So I never turned down too many opportunities to be interviewed. And then when I got hurt, there was other opportunities to do some analyst work, including with CBC News World, and then at the time, a brand new station called Headline Sports, which we know turned into the Score. and it launched careers like Elliot Friedman, myself, Gord Stellick worked on it a little bit, Steve Simmons, uh, Brian Spear, who's executive, one of the top producers at Hockey Night in Canada. It launched his career. So I just put my name in the hat. That's all I wanted to do is just put my name in there and get the experience. And then, sure enough, when I retired, uh, there was an opportunity of a second sports station to challenge TSN called CTV Sportsnet. They didn't think it would last 3 or 4 years because the country wasn't big enough for two major sports stations, and here we are in 2021, and we know that wasn't even close to being the truth. So I did a lot of opportunity. I took advantage of a lot of opportunities as a player that I think put myself in a position to get into it when my opportunities started to unfold, and that's what you're doing right now is just creating opportunities for you. So who knows when that next opportunity to come along, whether it's filling out a resume at Sportsnet, TSN, the Fan, who knows what's out there for you, but you're doing the right things right now to set yourself up.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And again, I appreciate you coming on and doing this. I've got a couple more questions, and I've got a little game I'd like to, an interactive game I'd like you to play here. But I got to ask, so this year the expansion draft is coming up.
Yeah.
Do you believe that the Seattle Kraken can replicate the success of the Vegas Golden Knights?
No. Definitively no. That was a once in a lifetime uh, situation. I think that the league has now paid close attention of the mistakes that were made by teams dealing with George McPhee when Vegas broke into the league, and now they'll do a better job of protecting themselves by not making deals with Seattle, but making deals with other clubs before they get to a situation with Seattle. So I think it would be a big mistake for Ron Francis now to try to build this team like they were able to do it in Vegas and legitimately think that they can get to a Stanley Cup final. I think if they can remain competitive and keep themselves in a playoff hunt, much like Ottawa hopefully can next year, that would be deemed a success in my eyes for Seattle.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I don't think they're going to replicate what Vegas did. I think that's once in a blue moon type of thing. The teams around the NHL have just been much better prepared. They know what to expect now, and they're
Yeah.
not going to make the same mistakes.
No, and the other one is, and I can appreciate if they can sign Freddie Anderson or Grubauer as free agents, but there is no Marc Andre Fleury out there. There is no one of the best goalies in history waiting to take over this team, and he's a special guy. He's a special talent on and off the ice. They were able to market him and have him lead. That was a deal that was decided 6 months before the expansion draft uh, between Pittsburgh and Vegas. That's just not out there for Ron Francis, and that that whole team from day one was built out from Marc Andre Fleury, and that's not going to happen here for Seattle.
I think Vegas has done a great job at obviously their roster and everything, but I think that they've done a great job of making them approachable for a fan base. The Seattle Kraken, I hope they have the same success with that. It's great to dive into new markets for the NHL. Uh, it helps people fall in love with the game. For you, what made you fall in love with the game of hockey?
Well, I think just the speed, uh, the overall excitement of watching the fans interact, and I wrote in my book that my earliest memories were my dad watching the game on TV and watching him get excited and him learning about the names and the stars of the league, and when he got excited I got excited, and it just parlayed into an opportunity of playing it actually for the first time when I was 7 years of age, and it was a real connection for me and my dad, and my dad being a Greek immigrant coming over from Canada or coming over from Greece to Canada, and then falling in love with Canadian things. And there's nothing more Canadian than falling in love with the game of hockey. So that's where it started for me.
I read in your book that I believe it was Jack Valaquette. He gave you a stick over the glass and then pointed you out.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
A special moment that was during an open practice for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Of course, tickets were so hard to get by. And my dad very seldom came across tickets, so I got myself into a practice for the Leafs, and it was 16,000 screaming kids, and there's I kind of weaseled my way up until the front row in the glass, and there's Jack Valaquette balancing a stick off his nose, and I'm screaming at him, and I was with like thousands of kids screaming at him, but he for some reason gave me that stick, and I clung I clung onto it like it was death trying to get it out of that building, but no one got it from me, Jake.
that's awesome. Uh, so do you have anything from your playing days? Like, are you a sports memorabilia collector?
Yeah, I no, probably didn't even come close to collecting the stuff that I could have, but my memories are locked between my ears right now in terms of the best feeling I can ever get from the game of hockey. So not as much as I probably should have had, but enough that I could pass on to maybe uh, one day grandkids. Who knows?
So I had a pretty cool story. It was involving you actually. You probably don't remember this. So 2014 Memorial Cup. Uh, I'm driving back on the 401 after being in London. I'm driving
Yes.
on the 401 from London, and I look over, and you're driving there. I am freaking out. I'm waving at you, a little kid. I just thought that was awesome.
I hope was I driving? Was I paying attention?
You were. I didn't mean to distract you if I did.
No, no, no. It's all good. And hey, thanks for sharing with that because that's what it's all about. It's about inspiring the next generation, and that's what our game is so great at. Jake is passing on the traditions and uh, and the torch. And for me, in my book, I mentioned some of the great older players that were able to kind of take me under their wing. Um, Earliest days was Dale Hunter in Washington, Rod Langway, Mike Liut, uh, even towards the middle of my career, having a Mark Messier to look up to, and all those life lessons that those guys can pass over, not only from watching them, but from sitting down and having dinner with them and hearing the stories and learning and absorbing it like a sponge. That's what it's all about, and I hope that's you. I hope that's you moving forward with your broadcasting career. That you can take every experience you can have up until this point and have it fuel your fire for your next challenge.
Yeah, just like the smallest thing, getting wave back from an NHL player, someone you look up to, someone you see on TV all the time. That can have such a big effect on someone.
Oh, without a doubt, and that's again, that's what it's all about, passing the torch.
Do you have, or rather, playing in Toronto and New York, some crazy fan bases? What's the weirdest autograph request you've ever received?
Oh goodness, I don't know, probably some body parts. That's the best I can tell you, and I leave it at that because I'm a family man now.
Yeah, that's the answer I've heard quite a lot. I've heard
Yes.
that answer. It's interesting. So, do you have your Stanley Cup ring with you by any chance?
I don't. It's at my mom and dad's right now, but it's something that I wore a lot on air, but it's not something that I wear a lot away. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, when there is no dinners to dress up for, no banquets, no fundraisers, it hasn't seen the light of day too often, but it's something I cherish, and that's what every player wants. It's a championship ring. Ours is very special in '94. It's got a skyline of New York City, and including the Chrysler Building, uh, and the World Trade Centers are on it as well. And of course, that was before the tragic events. Uh, but something near and dear to my heart is that Stanley Cup ring.
How special does it feel to have your name engraved on the Stanley Cup? You worked so hard to get to that
Yeah.
point, and that must be so rewarding.
Well, there's tens of thousands of players that have played in the NHL, but the percentages of getting your name on the Stanley Cup are still very, very difficult. So I just feel blessed and honored to be on it, and we know that even that's got a shelf life because as teams continue to win it, rings come off, and I'm not sure when our ring's ready to come off. I think I might have another 15, 20 years, I hope, before it comes off. But even if it comes off, it doesn't change the fact that, your names will always be associated with that Stanley Cup. And again, that's what Montreal fought for last night, to keep that dream alive. And good on them, because you never know when those opportunities ever come again, Jake.
As a Leafs fan, I know that. I
Yeah.
know that really well. So I want to play this. I want to play this new interactive game before we head off here. So this is going to be called Name That Teammate. So for this, I'm going to give you a series of hints and clues, and this
All right.
teammate was on one of the teams that you played on in the NHL. So
You are gonna make me work really hard right now.
I'm going to give you a series of hints. You can ask next hint, or you can
Okay,
take a guess at that point.
sounds
So
good.
here it is. Name that teammate. So, in his career, this NHL player played for 3 of the NHL franchises you played for.
Wow. Okay.
That does not mean at the same time.
No, no. So they were teammates with me in Washington, Hartford, New York, or Toronto, right?
Yes, in the NHL.
In the NHL. So I got New York, Toronto, Hartford, and Washington. I want to say 3. Okay, can you help me out here? So I assume it's Washington, Toronto.
No,
No, it's not, eh?
no. The next clue I have
Okay,
is
yeah, next clue.
he
Next
played
clue.
for a total of 5 NHL teams
Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna help
over
me.
15 NHL seasons.
Seasons. Um, names that are sticking out right now. I don't know why I want to say Wayne Presley, Don Beaupre. Uh, you got me stumped, man. Yeah, give me a third. Yeah, got a third clue.
He totaled 679 points in 920 regular season games played, but amazingly, he was only on a team that advanced past the first round of the playoffs once.
Not Sylvain Cote. Uh, uh, but yeah, you got me. Initials.
Uh, I have just a couple more. It's going to get
Okay.
more obvious
Oh,
as it
okay.
goes on.
I got more. Okay, clues. More clues.
He did not play his final NHL game until the 2008-2009 season.
Oh my God, he's a lady. He's young because I had retired. So my first team he would have played with was with the Leafs.
Didn't play for the Leafs.
No, didn't play for the Leafs.
No.
Jake, you're killing me right now. Didn't play for the Leafs. Played for New York, Wash, and Hartford.
Yes.
Okay, so not great. Hartford. Who's in Hartford with? Not Larmer. I mean, I got traded with Larmer. So Pat Verbeek? No, not Pat
No.
Verbeek.
No. Next hint.
Yeah,
He's
this one
currently
should do it.
he is currently coaching in the Ontario Hockey League.
Hartford. Who was in Hartford with me? Who's coaching now?
Okay. His
buddy, you got me.
Okay. His son led his team in points and scoring in the 2021 NHL playoffs.
Last year's 2021 playoff.
This playoffs that's going on right now. He led his team in points. His son.
His son.
His son.
Okay, we're drawing blanks here. Well, Kucherov led last season in points.
Not the entire playoffs. He
Not
led his team in points.
His team in points.
So this team's already eliminated.
So we gotta go. We gotta go search 16 teams.
He has two sons that are in the NHL.
Two sons that are in the NHL. Not Foligno. Who's got sons in the NHL? Jake, you're making me work way too hard here.
Okay. The answer?
No, initials.
MN.
MN. Michael Nylander.
That is correct. It is Michael Nylander.
Wow. See? Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right. You made me work my ass off. Took me a while, but I got it.
Well, thank you for participating in that. And again,
I'm exhausted right now. I'm exhausted. You made me work really hard, but I did get it. Did say it before you said it. I'm proud of myself.
There you go.
Kipper. All right, Jake. Thanks, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for coming on and have a great day.
Good luck with everything. Enjoy the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, you too.